Hi, everyone. It's time for Sunday School Bonanza, that great, fun podcast that's going to get you ready for gospel doctrine. Golly gee, Willikers, what a good time we're going to have today. I'm so happy to be here.
This is wonderful.
This is my wife, Danielle, everyone. She's laughing at me.
I'm really enjoying this.
And I've got my hands to my side like I'm doing a bossy stance, or Robin Williams in Hook once he gets his memories back and learns how to fly. Similar pose. Well, just Peter Pan in general, actually. So that's happening. We encourage you to go visit us at thisweekinmormons.com. So shoot us an email, contact at thisweekinmormons.com. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, etc., et al. All that stuff. And, of course, subscribe to this podcast if you're listening to it for the first time. That would be terrific. That's the way it grows, and that's the way we can make it better. Absolutely.
And you can learn.
Well, we hope so. So this week's Sunday School Bonanza lesson for the Old Testament is lesson 14. It's called Ye Shall Be a Peculiar Treasure Unto Me. And we're going back to Israel just for some quick recap. You might remember last week we had all that stuff, the plagues, Passover. Israel gets to the shores. They cross the Red Sea in this great grand miracle, which is pretty nuts. I mean, honestly.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
One of my favorite scenes. You ever seen the movie The Prince of Egypt? I know I'm asking you if you've seen an animated film, so that's the odds.
Yes, at one point I have.
There's this part when they're crossing the Red Sea and lightning flashes and you see the silhouette of a whale just next to them. And I always thought that visual was cool because I just thought, yeah, they're crossing the ocean, but they're still living like stuff on both sides of them. I don't know. It was just a great visual. The power of God is outstanding.
Now I'm wondering like what they crossed. There's probably like lots of things on the bottom of the ocean. Anyways.
Well, just rocks.
Yeah.
Sand. Mm-hmm. Other things, Red Sea, wildlife. Definitely things along those lines. And so, what I love to think is it's this great miracle that happened. Then, of course, eventually you turn to face the other way because the Lord has delivered you and you know you're supposed to go into Sinai. But I would definitely feel some apprehension, I think, in this circumstance. It's great that I've been taken care of so far, but at the same time, yeah, I'd be scared.
Yeah.
I'd be scared of the Egyptians, but now I'd be scared of being stuck in like an uncharted desert. And no one knows what's going to go on. The thing to remember about Sinai is it was mountainous. It was poorly explored at the time. It wasn't part of the trade routes that ran from like Canaan to Egypt. It was just desolate land that nobody, not even Moses, really knew. So the only person who knew it was the Lord, and that's why the Israelites had to rely on the Lord to actually get through the wilderness. And then, of course, if they were not faithful, they were going to have problems. And not to spoil anything, but it took them a long time to eventually get to their promised land because... Thus we begin 40 years of schmoery from the Israelites in this lesson.
All right. So, Jeff, what happens once they cross the Red Sea?
Well, they wander, and the Lord just wants to test them a little bit. And in this form of a test, it's in some ways one that I would not want to endure, but they're getting hungry. They're getting thirsty. Yeah. Not a pleasant experience for anybody.
That would not be pleasant for me at all.
No, I know. Yeah. Well, we can have a whole different discussion on Danielle's hangriness at a different time. But
he's trying.
It's understandable, but he's trying them. He's trying them, and they're getting a little fed up, and they're kind of murmuring about things. They're grumbling about stuff. They're complaining to God rather than even addressing it to Moses. But eventually, they do talk to Moses, and sort of the Lord relents and is like, "Well, I was trying to test you guys here, but fine, I will give unto you other ways to test your faith, which were in the form of."
The rules with the manna. So the Lord provides water and he provides food for them, manna and quail for their hunger. And then he gives them some rules with this manna that they can only collect it every day for enough that they need that day. And so what
happens if they keep it?
If they keep it, it turns all wormy and
it goes bad.
It goes rotten.
I had some thoughts on it. There's some things that speak to me on that. Of course, the manna is this bread. And what does Christ call himself oftentimes?
The bread of life. Yeah,
and so we see this good foreshadowing for them of their own Savior. But I see that for us as well, that we have to actually partake of Christ daily, what is given to us. I can't store up extra testimony and try to carry it over to tomorrow. I have to do it every single day.
Yeah, I always hear it related to scripture reading. If you read your scriptures every day, you're, partaking of that manna from
You're going to be
heaven.
better off, definitely.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your manna rant.
No, it's okay. But Jeff, you can tell us what happens on the seventh day.
Oh, well, not the seventh day, as much as because of the laws they had at the time, we'll get more laws coming. the manna they collected on the 6th or on the day before the Sabbath or whatever would not spoil because the Lord did not want them to engage in any sort of this work or anything. And so they could store it up then, but no other day. They couldn't keep it.
Yeah. So no manna came down on the 7th day.
No.
Yeah. So they had to learn, and I'm sure they probably learned quickly, but every day they had to have faith that that manna would show up the next day. And
I think
that's the way the Lord tested them.
And, really. it taught them to be obedient, and it taught them to, and we see, I think, a lot of the times with the Israelites that because they failed to perhaps grasp, I don't know if it's a more abstract concept to them or something like that, the Lord really delivered stuff to them in a very kind of
clear cut.
Step 1, step 2, you do this, and this is how you show your devotion to me, and you need this daily reminder of what I'm doing. And I think few things could serve as such a daily reminder of the Lord's goodness as, oh, well, all my food is just, provided for.
Yeah.
And also it goes along with the water, which came from the rock. That's the famous passage when Moses strikes the rock and water comes forth, because the other water they find is rancid, and they're able to get good water. And it's all through these miracles of God, and it's the only thing that helps.
Wasn't there also a tree, too, that brought them water?
Yeah. There were two different passages. First there was a tree, then there was a rock. I think of Lehi's family in the wilderness, too, when they don't complain, but they wonder, what are we supposed to do about like meat and food? And the Lord says, He'll make it sweet. He'll make it sweet unto them. Just you can eat it. Don't worry about cooking it because you have no fire. I'll take care of it. Is your microphone okay?
Yeah, all is well.
She was having bad experience. Now.
All right.
So after all this, manna's a good lesson here. This goes on for a very long time, that they go and collect the manna for years and years and years. So there's a group of people called the Amalekites. Not to be confused with Amulek of the Book of Mormon.
They are mean.
They're mean, and they warred with the Israelites pretty regularly. This happened a lot. And this is one of these passages of, I don't know, I don't remember learning about this much when I was younger.
I don't either.
But I think it's interesting.
I remember thinking that they were all alone, just for 40 years wandering. That's the way I thought it.
One would hope, right?
But it seems like they run into people all the time.
It's just this big party out there in the wilderness. But so of course, what here happens with the Amalekites? The Lord promised them, right, that Moses, if Moses
kept his hands up, like up in the air, then they would be protected, and that
Israelites would win.
They would triumph over the how do you say that?
Amalekites.
Okay, so if you're standing there with your hands up, Moses told them to go basically and fight, but Moses went up on the hill, right?
Yeah, so he
could see him.
Yeah.
And he has his hands up, and you get pretty tired with your hands up like that. I would
try holding up your arms and nothing else, even for more than a minute, and it gets old after a little while without moving. I mean,
that really power stance is what it's called. Yeah, and so there were two people that helped him. Who helped him, Jeff?
Well, we have, of course, Aaron, his brother,
and
I want to say Jethro.
I don't know, actually. I'm not right there.
Wait a minute. What is this?
That's why I was leaning on you. Where are you? Oh, my
goodness. I wasn't there. No, it was Aaron and Hur. Sorry. Jethro's coming up in a second.
Okay.
And they held up his arms.
Yeah, they held up his arms.
His counselors, in a way.
Yes.
Interestingly enough.
First and second.
Now, this is a point where your teacher might try to do some ill-conceived object lesson where they're going to make you stand there and put weights on your arms and ask you how easy it is to do. If they do this, you rebel and you say, how dare you? I'm better than this. Give me something more worthwhile in my lesson. That's what you say.
Or you play nice because that teacher has put their time and effort into planning the lesson.
No one who does that object lesson put time and effort into it. That's like when you and I do primary the day off. I'm sorry.
Anyways, so with the power and the help of his counselors, he was able to hold his arms up, and that they were able to triumph and win.
Yeah.
And that was according to the Lord.
But there's a great lesson here of how we actually sustain people. This is physical sustaining going on here in this case. Of course, but I believe there's where do I have this here? President Benson actually said, I am reminded how Moses up on the hill raised his arms for the victory of the armies of Israel. As long as his arms were raised, Israel prevailed. But when they dropped from the side, the enemy prevailed. And so Aaron and Hur stayed up his hands, the one on the one side, the other on the other, and Israel was victorious. So will we be victorious as we hold up the arms of the Lord's anointed servants. Because how easy is it for us to murmur? How easy is for us just to not actually support, to not hold up President Monson's arms in this case, or our bishop's arms in that sense and help actually lead us to victory. Sustaining really involves work and actually getting engaged.
It's not just that time when you raise your right hand.
No, sustaining it's a proactive verb. It's a transitive verb.
Yeah.
It has to happen.
So then after that, Jethro comes.
Yeah.
Who's Jethro, Jeff?
Moses' father-in-law.
That's
He's
right.
trying to please the old man.
Yeah.
Been there.
So I guess he runs into him. Because it sounds like they embraced and they were happy to see each other. And then Jethro, he observes Moses and how all day long the people are coming to Moses with all sorts of things. What are they coming to him with?
Well, a lot of their problems in general. And I like that here in Exodus 18, actually, it sort of lists out the roles of a prophet. And so you see what happens with the people. He's supposed to be a judge for the people, represent them before the Lord, teach them laws and ordinances, show them the way they must walk, and show them what they must do. That's in, if you read verses 16 through 20. And so the people were pretty much hounding Moses all the time for answers regarding any of those things, understanding laws, understanding being judged, whatever it may be. Moses was booked. He had a full docket.
Yeah, and so Jethro sees this. He sees that this happens all day and evening. And so he sits down with Moses and he actually counsels with him. And I kind of like their interaction. And he tells them that he needs to have support. He needs to be supported by others, and he needs to call basically righteous leaders to fulfill those roles.
To delegate, basically.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think we see this in our church. It's not just the prophet that's doing everything. We have to
delegate.
Yeah.
Especially as the church grows. I like this because it is one of the first examples in Scripture of straight up taking the prophet and saying, you've got to give this up to some other people and let some other people do what they can while you still maintain the keys and your authority.
Yeah, and even within our own wards and branches.
Yeah.
Our bishops can't do everything. So we have our individual callings, and we need to help support.
And we've even seen that in church history. Back in the old days, the only people who even had the sealing power were first like the prophet, maybe the first presidency, then the 12.
Mm-hmm.
And they said it does not work for the 12 to be the only people marrying people at this point. And so, we delegate things down.
Yeah.
It's normal. So we're going to move on to the 10 Commandments here in our closing minutes. One thing to bear in mind here, I think a lot of people get confused, even in Christian circles, that the 10 Commandments themselves might be fulfilled or no longer in play because the law of Moses was fulfilled. And the important thing to remember is that even though the commandments and the law of Moses were given to Moses at the same time, they were actually kind of separate things that went down. So the 10 Commandments still stand today. And even as the Israelites failed at a number of things, the 10 Commandments were always there as a guide for them, regardless of whatever other laws were given unto them. And so the cool thing here is they're hanging out around Sinai. And the Lord wanted them to have these positive experiences that would do them better. I like that in Exodus 19 it mentions they actually had to wash their clothes before they came before the Lord.
Yeah,
which is interesting. And so Moses goes up, gets the 10 Commandments, and let's break some of these down here. Because first of all, why would he go up to the mount? Why is he way up in Mount Sinai?
To be closer to God. It's almost like a temple. There's many times where they refer to mountains as temples.
Yeah, and I think it's also because of the solitude that's equated with that, really being able to be away from things. And have
it was
peace.
A holy place.
Yeah. So of the 10 Commandments, the first 4 really explain a lot more about our direct relationship with God, and the other 6 are almost like lifestyle. Lifestyles, not suggestions, but commandments. Yeah. So the first one, of course, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Mm-hmm. I think that applies to us today. I mean, what gods do we have before us today that are not even religious?
Supermodels and
brands.
iPhones.
President Elder Nelson's talk in this past conference, he talked about that the brand could be an idol and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or a brand could be our God. It's good. The next one, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, which is an interesting one, which is similar to that.
Comes into play next.
Yeah, I think I wrote here in my notes once, like, have you ever known someone who buys a home or a certain kind of car and then realizes, oh, but I can't pay my tithing now because of the money I had to spend on these other things. So we got to think about that. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord in vain. That's one I believe in a lot.
Good. I appreciate that.
I will tell you, even when I was younger and there were times when I used to swear like a sailor, I have always I've never been big on the Lord in vain thing, though. I've always avoided that. I feel like I might drop some terrible profanity here, but I'm not going to blaspheme.
Good.
It's a weird rationale, but we shouldn't do it. And then keep the Sabbath day holy, of course. How do we do that today?
Well, we worship our Lord on the Sabbath day.
Yeah.
And typically don't try to spend money or do things.
Yeah, because it's not just a day of rest. It's a day of active spiritual pursuits. Yeah. And by the way, just so we know, breaking the Sabbath was a capital offense in the law of Moses. So
off with your head.
A little bit worse. The remaining 6 commandments, though, what do we have here? We've got honor thy father and thy mother, which I think it's great that's clearly the next thing listed after our relationship with God. Honor your parents. And then don't kill, don't commit adultery, don't steal, don't bear false witness, don't covet your neighbor's house.
These are all good things to follow.
Yeah, I'm with it.
Do them. Great. So what happens when Moses is up on the hill, though, Jeff?
Well, we also have, law of Moses.
Yeah.
Comes to him. The interesting thing, though, is that the Lord revealed ordinances that included the Melchizedek priesthood. We learned this in Doctrine and Covenants, section 84. But the Israelites' behavior showed that they weren't ready for it, and so instead they received this lesser law. And the law of Moses, a lot like the manna, was very much more, I felt like, sort of in disciplinary, just actions, structural things of that nature, just things they could carry out.
So how did the people show that they were not ready for it? Do you remember what happened?
I've heard something about some sort of a silver eagle.
No. It was a golden calf, Jeffrey.
Oh,
it was a golden calf.
I knew him.
So while Moses is up there, the people are down below, and Aaron helps in creating this golden calf because these people want something to worship. I love that
Aaron did it too.
I know. Peer pressure, Aaron.
Yeah, you feel like Aaron should know better, but he might have just felt like, all right, whatever.
Yeah. So, and while Moses is up there, the Lord tells Moses, he says, your people, they're not following what I told them, basically. And so the Lord is really angry, really, really upset about this. And Moses actually kind of calms down the Lord a little bit. And then he goes down.
I like that Moses is trying to step in at this point and say, hey,
he's like, hey, Lord,
take it easy. It's
calm
okay.
Down. It's okay. And he goes down and he sees his people. And when he sees what's happened, Moses gets all...
This isn't in the lesson, by the way.
This
is good because keep reading the chapter. And
it's just interesting because Moses gets so infuriated by them. And he takes the calf, he burns it, he grinds it down, he puts it in their water, and he makes them drink
their golden powder water.
Very interesting. And then there's a lot of bloodshed. So, anyways.
Oh yeah, doesn't he ask? He asks the Levites, he says, who stands with me?
Who stands with me?
And the Levites, always being the good ones, stand up. And then he's like, all right, now you're going to kill the 3,000 who were being dumb.
And they also, So, there's a whole lot. The Old Testament is very interesting.
It's got a lot of messed up passages.
So, the people were not ready for this, obviously. And they had a lot more to learn and a lot more time in the wilderness.
And then the good point here, though, is, of course, the people had to sacrifice, as animal sacrifice. That's a big thing they did there, and that was how that was supposed to symbolize the sacrifice that would be made on their behalf later on. Of course, that was fulfilled as time went on, because when Christ came, he fulfilled that. He replaced the law of Moses with the gospel. That's an important thing to remember. And that's when the law of Moses was completed, and things really changed because of the atonement. The sacrifice isn't as much about one's animal, like what you are offering. It's about us actually being the offering in and of ourselves, I believe. And instead we're offering up, our time and our talents and all those things. We're sacrificing things we might want, whatever we might covet for Christ.
Yeah.
So that's what happens. And next week we're going to get into more of this good stuff.
Keep it going. Don't stop.
Danielle, thanks for being here. Visit us again soon.
I live here, so I will be here.
Don't tell them that we don't record this in a professional grade studio.
Okay.
Well, anyways, folks, thanks for listening into Sunday School Bonanza, and we hope you have a good one. Danielle, we love having you here.
Thank you.